Are you left-handed or right or ambidextrous? Does that affect how well you shave your hands? I get questions in this vein all the time, and I am right-handed, and you can see that I do a pretty good job of shaving with my left hand. That's mostly due to having done this for decades. But you'll see in the later part of this video that I do modify the shaving technique a little bit. When I'm shaving my dominant hand, I will begin to move my right hand more than I'm moving the blade with my left hand. Like right here, you can see an example of how like the jerking motion for the quick little cuts is sometimes done by my dominant hand. And it just is because I have better fine motor control with my right hand. This was the point when I realized that blade was getting dull and it was time to change it out. And then now we can get a lot more precise cuts without the risk of the blade catching or kind of forcing itself through the skin, which can cause it to slip or maybe cut too deep a little bit by accident. Generally, I cut out the parts where I'm grabbing the skin and pulling it out of the shaver, and I have done so in this video as well, but I've left these couple in so you can just see that like when you see the cuts in an edited video, it's because I do that a lot. Sometimes the blade just gets a little clogged because the skin isn't popping through. It does most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. It'll catch and snag, and then I have to reach over and clear it out just like this. So I often cut that out just because these videos on TikTok have to be short and we have precious little time to show things. And so I do usually cut that out so that you can just get to the shaving. But you'll see I have a lot of control with my left hand, even though it's not my dominant hand. And that is just due to experience. It was definitely a challenge when I first started shaving. I also want to address technique a little bit here because there's a bit of a misconception or like just a lot of questions about like how I'm not hurting myself or cutting too deep, especially along these delicate edge areas. But if you look carefully, you can see that like there's almost no pressure at all. I choose to use a very sharp, fresh blade always. When it even shows the first sign of being dull, I immediately change it because I would rather shave with a sharp blade. It allows the skin to slice off just buttery smooth, and it gives me maximum control. As the blade gets duller, it immediately becomes more dangerous. And if I continue and push forward with a dull blade, it's going to take twice as long to shave, and I'm probably going to cut myself more. So anyway, I do very well with my non-dominant hand on the bigger portion of my palm like you see here. But as I start to get into these smaller areas with more curves, you're going to see my right hand there, right there, just like that, doing a lot more of the shaving with my hand that has the most fine control and the most, it's my dominant hand. So I'm just a little bit more precise with my ability to do movements with it. And also, this is why usually when I'm showing hand shaving, I show me shaving my non-dominant hand, my left hand, because when it's sped up at all, that wiggly, jerky motion I'm doing with my right hand to accomplish the shave, it does not translate well to any sort of sped up video. In real time, it kind of looks fine, but if you speed that up at all, it just looks like my hand is vibrating really fast while the shaver sits in place, and it looks kind of bad. So usually I don't show it, but here's a great example of how I do it. So I'm just gliding the blade along very lightly. And like when I do the edges here, I am barely touching it with the blade. I'm just zip, 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 sliding along the very topmost surface. And because the blade is so sharp, it will take off these paper thin little layers. The red ring around the edge of my hands is a mark of this condition. It is just what it looks like. It's not sore or inflamed over there. It's just that's what it looks like. But when I get very close to the edge, I'm not putting any pressure on the blade at all. I'm just letting the blade do the work as the tool just slides along the top of my hand with no pressure. When I get to these thicker areas in the middle, I do need to apply some pressure, and you can sometimes see I change my grip, or you can kind of see I'm pushing my right hand into the blade here to get the thicker bits off. So it's a balance, and it's an acquired skill. For anyone who happens to have EBPK who's hoping to try this, and I know most of my audience doesn't, but some of you do, I would recommend before you ever try a shave, go a few cycles with a sanding tool first. My nerves have adjusted to this level of sensitivity, but it didn't happen overnight. It happened from a lifetime of shaving, and now to me it feels unusual to have it thick. But if you're used to it being thick, sand first.